Hi, everyone. I'm Mara Webster with In Creative Company, and thank you so much for tuning in today to one of our talks. We are a year-round digital talk series bringing you the best creative voices across film, television, and theater, both in front and behind the camera. And today we are joined by the fantastic Nicole Lear, who is an actress, but also writer, producer, director, activist. I don't think you ever sleep. And it sounds like quarantine has been insanely busy for you because you're actually in production on a feature right now.
Yes.
Is this something where you're just kind of going into the first waves of pre-production, or is it any sort of reshoots from before the shutdown happened?
Yeah, this is a new project. And I've actually, yeah, this is a new project that's just starting up. I'm directing this, so I'm very excited. And I'm just finishing my quarantine. Actually, tomorrow is my last day. So they've had me like all set up in the place that I'm staying, and this is the production office. So it's actually been beneficial, in 14, 15 days of quarantine, focused pre-production, you can get a lot done. We have a fast prep on this one. We got like 2 weeks, and we go to camera on September 2nd, so it's real fast.
Wow. And
Real.
what's the difference been in terms of, because you've directed before, but what's the difference been for you in terms of this one, having to think through a lot of different protocols, and even just the way that you're going to direct actors on set as well is going to be hugely different?
It really, really is. And I think one of the things is I'm somebody who you always want to be respectful as a director. So when you give notes to a director, you don't want to yell out. You always want to respect that energy that's so important for the acting process. And I usually like to say, oh, a sidebar, or like, can I whisper something in your ear for like a redirect if you're trying to get something different from the other actor. So I think for me, it will just be, you have to stay 6 feet apart. I have to use my words. I have to put on my big girl panties and communicate. So I look forward to that challenge, and I look forward to making sure that my language is interesting enough, and that my verbs for the actors are really, I'm really explaining quickly and efficiently what I need from them. But it is going to be, I like to get close, and I love that trick with the actors. Like, okay, this time, like, do it completely different. Don't even play the scene, and surprise them because you get the performance and the close-ups on the other actors. So it'll be interesting figuring out how to get those secret directions to the other actors when they're working with the other actors.
How's it going to work in terms of hair and makeup? Because obviously that's a process that usually literally involves touching someone else's face, which is something that we're all trying to avoid right now.
Yeah, so all of when you come into production, like right now, you all have to take COVID tests. So before you have to clear them, then everything is, all of the crew has that. I believe all of the cast after they're offered here in Canada, then they have to take a COVID test. So that's cleared. And then with hair and makeup, of course, sometimes I'm not sure with this particular production, but I have heard on another one of my friends' productions, the actress actually did her own makeup, but that was out of her own choosing. So they're extremely safe. Washing the hands, hand sanitizer. And then I believe with the actors, it's their every 3 days. Certain people on production have to take the COVID test, and they have somebody come to the location. They set up a medical tent, and the tests are done right there on location. So it's a lot, but it's you don't always want to have something up there, but we have to do that for safety. And I think everybody is really focused on making sure that this global pandemic is under wraps. And I'm very proud of my crew for the work that they've done up until now, because we have been very, very safe. And all the crews here, I love my crew the most, but everybody has been working very hard. So that's one way that they'll be working. And I know hair and makeup is confusing, right? Because you're touching the faces, and everybody's like, well, how does that work? You still have to get your makeup done. So just for all my actresses out there, yes, you still makeup is done by the artist. Yeah.
Diving back a little bit to kind of earlier in your career when you were starting out, like I love that you started in the TV series Edgemont, kind of at a very young point, actually, right out of high school. And TV shows are such an interesting process as an actor, because you're not just having those kind of like small story arcs where you always know the ending, but there's a lot of open-ended things, and really not always knowing where a storyline with your character is going to go, and kind of like developing and finding all these layers throughout the entire process. So what were kind of the steepest learning curves for you when you first stepped onto that set and you were figuring all of those pieces out?
You went way back. I love that. Edgemont was a huge learning curve for me. Um, my background is very different than most people. I left home even at a very, very young age. And then when I finally got to Edgemont, it happened very quickly. I was very thankful for that. And one of the things that was really hard for me was this nervousness feeling that I would have on set. So, I came from a very small town, interior BC, came down to the big city, booked a part 5 years on a show. And the first year I was very deer in the headlights, I'm not gonna lie. I had no idea what was happening. I had no idea why this person was doing my makeup. I had no idea why they were putting cups in front of me and that I couldn't like chug the water because it had to match. And so it was a really everything was a steep learning curve. The whole process, the casting process, even when I booked it, I remember the I'm still friends with the casting director, Dorothy. I remember her being so excited for me. She's like, "This is going to be the start of something amazing for you." And I was just like, "Oh, like I didn't really know what that meant." So I had a lot of lovely people that really supported me, and they had to be patient with me because I didn't know left from right. So it was a lot, but I caught up really quickly, and the first AD was very helpful. There's lots of people when you're new, if you're respectful and you ask, I think it's always great to ask things in a question. Even if you think you know the answer, I always try to phrase things like that. So I learned really quick.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, I think I did upset one props master where for some reason I was a nervous eater. Like I am still am an emotional eater. And I think I was like, I need gummy bears in this scene. But it was more because I was just so nervous. I wanted to be like eating. And they're like, you can't do that. And it's like crinkly, it's like noisy and all of those things. I had no idea. But they brought them and we talked after with the director. He's like, you maybe don't want to eat on camera. I'm like, okay.
Yeah, and I love, that throughout your entire career since then, you've worked in such a variety of different mediums, and even now you continue to, produce, direct, and act in short films, which, I think some people see short films as a stepping stone in terms of like, oh, well, you do a couple of shorts and then you start getting the features. But for you, it feels like it's a great creative outlet. So what is the thing that it really allows you to just kind of be more playful with as an actor in particular?
Yeah, well, I think that, yeah, some people do look at it just like you said. I totally agree. But what I look at it is that if we want to tell certain stories and we want to get those stories out in the world, you don't always get paid. The kind of style I love what I'm making. I'm working on a story that's a romance right now, and I love it. We're going for a cross between like Amelie and La La Land, and it has these like bright colors, but with Black Chicks and Neil LaBute, I wanted to do something political. And I wanted to talk about, this thing that we're all fighting together and we're all standing against. And you can't always get funding for those kind of projects. So my short films are a way to kind of tell the stories that maybe the big networks might not quite be ready to have us tell. But I think that we're moving in a right direction. I really do. I think that the networks and the producers and the actors and the directors and the stories that we're pushing to tell, they're starting to ask. They're wanting to see those. But up until now, the short films have been my vehicle for getting the scandalous and the more political and the heavy stories out into the world. And I think I'll always do them because when you do a short film and you're able to bring out a lot of people, you can go really big. We made one that was a story on the World War II, when unfortunately the internment camp happened for the Japanese people. So, I really try to use the short films as a tool for the stories that are harder to share.
Yeah, I wanted to talk a little bit about Black Chicks, since you mentioned that collaboration with Neil LaBute, and you originally put that on as a play, and then actually convinced him to turn it into that short film, which is so beautifully constructed and made. And so, what was that kind of process in terms of collaborating with Neil and figuring out, how it was going to go from the version that you'd put on as a stage version, and figuring out how it was going to look on screen in a totally different medium, but still capturing in essence the same story?
It was so fast. Everybody often asks about this. They're like, "Whoa!" And this, I was working on the play at Studio 4. James Fanker had used to have the Studio 4 in LA, and we were like working on all kinds of stuff, and we were like doing like really gritty stuff. We wanted to dive deep, so I was like, "This is the play that I'm gonna do." And at that time, it was called Black Chicks, and so I was working on it. And my business partner was up here shooting Van Helsing, which is a TV series that Neil LaBute was the showrunner of. And so I like came up for the weekend and I was like, huh. I was like, so do you know who Neil LaBute is? He's like, no. I'm like, you don't get it. Like Neil LaBute to any actor, to anybody who loves playwriting he's the best of the best of the best. And his stories, you read his stories and you either are like, or you love them. Like you always are affected. And people who know Neil LaBute know this. And I stole his email address from my business partner's laptop when he went to a location scout one day. And I emailed Neil. And I just said, hey, you're working with my business partner, Brandon Ugama, on Van Helsing. I had recent, and I told him, and I was like, what do you guys think about doing this as a short film? I got one word answer back from Neil, and I was sweating because that's like really not something you should do. It's not professional. I don't recommend it to anybody who sees this, but I went for it. I got one word answer back from Neil, sure. And then we brought on David Cupid. We rehearsed for 1 week, and then we shot the next weekend with the cameras that our cinematographer owned. We got a beautiful location and we just did it. We shot it like a play. David Cupid was amazing with getting off book. So it happened literally in the span of about 2.5, 3 weeks from pitch to shoot to final edit. And then we started submitting to festivals. Yeah, it was real fast.
You know, and you've had the opportunity to work with some really incredible directors, including Neil. And, you know, when you were working with him and having him direct that short, as an actor, but also a director, are you kind of looking at the way that he's working and taking notes on things that you want to pull into your process as a filmmaker?
No. I didn't actually, and I shouldn't have. I should have. That's great advice. But I think it was such a heavy story, and it meant so much to me and all of us that I was just fully immersed in that character. And poor David has to say some really harsh things to my character, and so it was hard, right? Like one of the lines of the character, David Cupid is a wonderful man. I'm good friends with him. We're great. But one of the lines is when and he's speaking about Black women, when you paint your toes, they look like elephant toes. You know, this is the kind of language that's it just strikes you. Like, what does that even mean to anybody? So there was no way that I don't think I had the capacity of learning from the directing at that time as well as acting. I just had to be fully in the character. Um, Probably should have been watching that part too.
Next time
Always
you
learn.
learn.
Always
I was
something.
going to ask you about your production company because you were mentioning your business partner. You know, and I think it's so fantastic. And like you were mentioning with your short films, the types of stories that you're seeking out and really proactively wanting to tell is so great. What was the value for you in not just kind of saying, oh, I want to kind of become a producer, but in actually starting your own company and really putting together a space that ultimately can welcome other voices in that space as well?
I just wanted to direct. I think that for me, like I always say that I'm a producer out of necessity. Being a producer, and some directors call them bean counters, which is like, it's a really hard work because your job is to get a product that is beautiful and has quality and then sell the product. But you also have, like, your job is people, right? You need all of these people to create this product. So I always just wanted to direct and I wanted to act. And so I created that company so that I could use my voice with directing, and then I had to be a producer by necessity. Um, I was very fortunate. I was able to work with a lovely producer from Sony, Sean Williamson, who I was able to work for him as an assistant for I think 3 years, and learn that side of it. But the things that they have to do and that they have to manage, it's crazy. You know, it's wild, and the budgeting and the finding the financing. So I learned a lot about that. I feel like I'm a really wonderful um, independent producer, but my goal with my company is the directing and the acting and the stories and the creative side of the things. Yeah. So if there's any producers that want to work with me that love it, let me know.
Every producer's just been like, great, hired. Uh,
Yeah.
in terms of directing as well, you know, and particularly thinking about the project that you're shooting right now, how
Yeah.
does that kind of change up your process as an actor? Because you're in the weeds from the beginning, you're there very early on, and you're thinking so in depth, not even just about your own character, but the relationships between every single character.
Yeah, I don't know if you can. It's just, yes, it's like very in depth. Yes, yes. You were saying.
So how does that cause you to kind of sit with the scripts and prepare differently from the way that you normally would in terms of your process?
I think that it's like one thing that I do as a director for the actors, and I'm not sure if all directors do it, but and I know a lot of people have this book. I literally, as a director, go through the script with this, and for every scene, for every actor, so that I can be a good director. Because as an actor, we all have experienced faster, angrier, matter, and you're like, dude, come on, like what are you saying? So I action the entire script for the actor. So in any scene I will have verbs for the actors. I will know like the intention, and I think that a lot of directors would love to do that. It just takes a little bit extra because it's another pass of the script that you have to do, but then the performances are so dialed in, and the actors have something, that texture feeling when the performances are, the difference is like between a performance that's exciting and that has that like you can almost feel it when they're living it. So I try to give them as many tools, and I'm not sure if all directors do that. I hope that they do, because I think that it's such a valuable thing to have wonderful actors that can understand your language, and it's very important. So that's one thing that I do. I hope it helps. Maybe I talk too much. I don't know. Sometimes it's good just to shut up and let the actors do their thing. And I do talk too much. I learned that when I was working with an amazing company who took the first shot on me as a director, Real Arc in New York. And I was like, man, I just really need to shut up. Like sometimes you just need to let the actors work out. Say something small, put the cup in the other hand, and just let them work it out. So I'm learning. I'm learning. Let's talk. Yeah.
One of the projects that I also wanted to ask you specifically about was your recent film, A Score to Settle, where you starred alongside Nicolas Cage, because you've mentioned publicly how that was an experience where you went in originally to read for the daughter to Benjamin Bratt's character, and then they ended up having you take a pass at this other character that you ended up playing that was originally written for a man. But what I think is so interesting about your performance in that film is the way that you take this character and you add these feminine elements, but there's still like this real masculine energy to who she is as well at the same time. And so I was really curious about whether you looked at the two different iterations of who this character was, and the two different intentions that the filmmakers had to kind of pull them together in that way.
First of all, I just want to say thank you for watching that performance and looking that closely. That means so much to me. Um, and you're right. I just got shivers. That's very, very nice of you. So thank you. Um, so that character was so interesting because I have an energy, like I'm kind of like a tomboy because I grew up like fixing cars and like drag racing. The person that raised me was like a truck driver. So I have this like very, I'm short, I'm 4'11", I'm like quite tiny, but then I have this big energy. And so for me, that was the character that made sense, but it was written for a man. And so I just said, hey, can I tape this? Like, would you guys let me? And the casting directors, just so you know, that's for a man. I'm like, no, 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 I know. Can I just show you? Because I know who this character is. I've kind of lived a little bit and I understand this character. So I just taped it for them. I didn't think about the feminine side of her, but the writers were very smart and they gave her a son, a young woman. She's like a really young character. She's like supposed to be 18 to 25 or whatever, and they gave her a son. So I think that element of having that young, cute, and the actor was so cute and so good. He was really good. Um, Helped, but I actually really just wanted to like dive in and like get into the kahunas of the character because you don't get that often as a female. And so it was really nice just not to have to be nice. Like my first line to Mr. Cage when he walks in, he's like, so you running things now? And I'm like, why are you asking? Because I don't got a dick. Like everybody wants to say things like that, and you want to stay in character, but it's fun. It's so fun, and it's fun to like say it to somebody as successful as Nick Cage. And we just had a lot of fun. So I didn't think too much about the feminine. I think the writing took care of that, and also, I am who I am. So I hope that that essence came through. But yeah, just again, thank you for diving that deep. That's pretty cool.
Course. No, it was a great performance and really memorable. And it sounds like you and Nicolas Cage had an incredible kind of chemistry together as performers and scene partners as well. And I love something that you mentioned about both of you approaching your characters from a very method perspective, staying in character between scenes. And, especially when you're working along someone like Nicolas Cage, who's been doing it for years, were there any kind of things that you looked at in terms of how he approached his performance and how he inhabited his role as a method actor that were useful takeaways for you?
Yeah, I did watch him very closely because I was so honored. I actually wasn't expecting to get that. It was a big surprise, and I wanted to make sure that my stuff was locked and loaded and ready to go. He is a workaholic in the most wonderful way. He's extremely kind and generous, not only to the other actors he works with, to the crew. He works in a method way. Like the character that you see on screen, that's who I met. And then when we would like rap, of course I did the new actor thing. We were shooting in wine country, so I had to gift him something because it meant so much. And he was just so chill, and you know, it was amazing because at that time I think he signed a three-picture deal. So he was shooting like, and some of those I think they were overlapping with those companies. So he was literally learning lines while we were shooting of like the next film. And what I learned from him is his ethic. So during the middle of takes, he would know our film so like I think he had the whole film off book, and he would start learning the lines of the other film on breaks, even if it was a 5 minute break. It was amazing to watch, like absolutely amazing and great learning experience about just putting your nose down and getting the work done. I have a saying that one of my coaches tells me, and I believe it to be true, but your discipline will determine your reputation. And I think Nick Cage really solidified that for me, is that your discipline will determine your reputation, no matter who you are, no matter what your position is.
Yeah. So are you still working with an acting coach every time you take on a new project? And if so, kind of like, how does that really help you to just keep honing and developing your craft as an actor?
Always. I always, and I think like for the rest of my life, I will strive to do that. There are times when the turnaround is really, really fast. But you just have to do it because there's things you can't see. If you're emotional, if you have, something where there's a very emotional scene, as we all know, when we're emotional, we all do crazy things. You might like throw something, or you might speak up, and you might like, or maybe you're speaking up at the wrong time because you're trying to be emotional and not being emotional, which we never want that. So you need that second set of eyes. It's like having a mini director before you have the director. And I think it's important to always be working, to be studying. Even now, while I'm in production of this feature film, I actually speak with my coach on the weekends. We may not be talking about a particular part. I work with Ben from Crash Acting out of LA, and he does this cool coffee chat that's free. And I encourage all artists just to check that out because the things that he talks about are for me life changing, and he opens me up. I think he's great, him in that studio really, and also Larry Moss. But it's important just to keep learning, right? We're all learning in life, and it doesn't even have to be acting because we have to live our life to be able to be good actors. Because if you don't know what's going on, how can you act it? So, yeah, if that makes sense. I don't know if I talked in a circle there.
No, it absolutely does. And I know that also you like to go very in depth in terms of creating a character backstory. I know everyone has kind of their different approach to that, whether it's writing journals and writing things down or kind of going out as that character into everyday situations. Like, what's the way that you kind of dive into that backstory beyond what's on the script for yourself?
You have to create it all. And for me, I always start with story. You always have to go back to story, but then you have to build on that. And I try to always do extensive amount of work. What was the mother like? What was the childhood like? All of this stuff. But then you have to throw it all out. And this happens in all departments. For instance, they just let me know that locations are changing. My whole shot list that I've been building for 2 weeks, different things have to change. And that's the fun of it. Like I think we just have to bring back this like and maybe not, I know lots of people are doing it, but maybe for some people they need to bring back that sense of like fun and play and like not worry about the bean counters, not worry about the producers. Like let them do their job. They're going to tell you when you can't afford, the thing or the location. And for the actors, they're going to let you know when you've gone too far. And that's why you work with a coach who's the mini director before you get to the real actor. But do all the things. And then for some people I noticed, and I've been learning this as a director, some people will over rehearse and then it will ruin the performance. So you want to work on things and maybe that doesn't, it's not running the lines. You're just kind of maybe thinking about what was happening in that character's life before this scene. So it really helps. Um, Tons of backstory, knowing the childhood, knowing how the person was raised, because for me, I think that's how you will determine how that person reacts differently in different situations. Yeah, lots of things. And sometimes it's different. Sometimes you like, with there was like lots of little blocking things, and I actually learned I needed to vape. I don't smoke or anything with the Nick Cage thing. One of the big things was like learning to make that look real, and I had to like. I wanted to. This was my choice, but the smoke that blows out the nose, and it looked cool. That was like a little, vanity. Probably check my ego after that, but it looked cool on camera, and the DP liked it, so we kept it in. So a big part of that was just learning how to smoke.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Kind of, separate to all of your acting, producing, directing, and everything that you're doing in that realm, one of the things that's so fantastic about just beyond the stories that you choose to tell as an artist is the fact that you've really intertwined that with activism, and use your voice in a lot of really great ways, particularly with social media, and you lent your voice to Bite the Bullet stories recently as well. And was it something where kind of when you first were coming into the industry that you knew that was going to be an important element to your career for yourself, or was it something that you kind of just discovered along the way through the stories that you started gravitating towards and the types of characters that you wanted to voice?
I didn't always know. And I'm actually kind of like embarrassed to say that because I think that I should have known. But I think that now that I know, like now that it's come to me and you always feel it. You're like, that's not quite right. Like, but you don't really know what it is. Both of the people who raised me and my entire family was white. And so for me, not that that's any kind of excuse or, we all need to stand up for people of all different backgrounds, all different races, all different things that we're all, equality, women's rights, all of these things. But I didn't know that they needed our voice and we needed to speak up so badly. And I think that's something that I'm learning more and more and more. And even in my casting last week, me and the casting directors have been super pushing, just asking. And everybody does. Like, I think that I really want to express that everybody is really trying their best, but a lot of people just don't know. So we have to keep talking. We have to keep sharing. And if it means that right now, that's for some people it's just social media, or that's for some people just talking to their neighbor next door. We don't, I don't think we don't have a choice. And so it came to a point where I was like, I just don't have a choice. We have to be loud and we have to be compassionate, and we have to also at times be understanding with difficult people who may not have the same point of view, because nobody really truly wants to be wrong. And for me, that has been the key, is listening. And it sounds so simple, but it's really hard when you're talking about the big issues. There's one woman who I keep bringing up when I'm talking to people, but her story is just so brave. And she lives in North Carolina. She called and she said, Nicole, and I don't know her. She just called me off Instagram, literally called how you can do the video chat. And she's like, what do I do? And I was like, I'm sorry, what do you mean? She's like, I'm a little white lady. And if I speak out in my community, the Klan will come and burn down my house. And I'm scared, but I want to fight with you. And I don't know what to do. And so I said, let's talk at another time, because I was like, what do that's somebody's life. And so we just cried together. There was nothing that we could do. I said, I hear you. And she would tell me about her life. And things growing up for her and the different experiences. But I think sometimes we just have to be there for people. And I still talk with this lovely lady, but it's very hard for her because it's dangerous for her to put a sign up in her front yard, even though she desperately wants to. Um, and so we found some ways where she can actually anonymously put her story into the world, which I think is great. Um, but you know, we just have to listen more, and I'm working on that a lot because just people just don't know. They just don't know.
No,
Yeah.
that's incredibly powerful. And I love the way that you're using your voice, both through, you know, the stories that you're telling, the way that you're using social media, and your voice as an artist and performer as well. And I wish you nothing but the best of luck with your film right now and hope that everything goes really wonderfully.
Thank you so much. This has just been such a lovely interview, and you're so in depth in your research. It was a pleasure speaking with you. Really fun.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.